of visa changes taking place. You guys had a ton and ton of questions. So we thought, who better to bring in than the TikTok lawyer herself, Ludmila Yamalova. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure to finally have you on the show. We've been stalking you for, I think, years, months.
Well, the stalking is mutual. I have been stalking you as well, and I've been waiting for this moment, and finally has arrived. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Of course, the pleasure is all ours.
I don't know how right it is to say stalking a lawyer, though. Stalking to
It's
a
okay.
lawyer.
I took note of this, and I think we're gonna have a few recordings.
It's unfortunate that you're gonna have this footage later, so I just won't send it to you.
It's okay. I'm sure others are already capturing it.
Okay.
So the evidence.
We're talking to a lawyer. Guards up.
Thanks for being here. Can you start off by telling us about yourself and what you do and how you got into TikTok?
Okay, so I am a U.S. qualified lawyer, and I've been in the UAE, who would have thought, 15 years now.
Wow.
I came, as so many of us, for what I thought was going to be 1 year. I moved here from San Francisco, wanted the adventure and travel around, and 15 years later, I am still here. So the opportunity was sort of seized the opportunity and decided to set up my own law practice. And I've basically been doing the same thing. I'm fairly boring in that regard. I haven't really ventured out in any other disciplines. I've been in the same office in JLT for the last 15 years. So fairly kind of boring pedigree, if you will, or history. Just practicing law in the same place, in the same city, in the same office for 15 years. And I had been privileged enough, until COVID, that is, to not even have to market my business, because I had been on the radio for many years. I was a legal commentator on different platforms, including for a lot of the different periodicals or newspapers. I'm not sure if you can even use that word anymore. Nobody really uses
What's
paper.
A newspaper?
The national. Yeah, I know exactly. This is a different generation. This is yeah. So you need to look at that in encyclopedia. You might be able to find the definition.
What's that?
So I did not have to market much, and it's still the UAE and the Dubai in particular is a fairly small place. So the word of mouth kind of worked for me until COVID, that is. And so when COVID came, and it affected our business, as it did so many other businesses, and so I basically had to sort of think outside the box and try to figure out a way to reinvent myself and rebrand. And part of that was to embrace the new social order, the new world order, and that is social media. So I know I look very young, your generation, but I'm a little older than you. So everything to do with social media is not really my space. But I thought, listen, if I'm going to try to do something different, I need to bring the younger generation who can introduce me to perhaps other tools. And when I hired finally the marketing manager, Sumaya, so I remember during her interview, she goes, "I'll put you on TikTok." I was horrified. I mean, like all I knew about TikTok, sort of kind of the very high level.
Oh, Sumaya, she nailed it.
She's amazing.
Honestly, I have to tell you. I mean, all I knew was that there's just the dancing and the sort of the entertainment. So, so when she said if she was going to do TikTok, first I thought she was crazy, but then I thought, well, listen, if I don't want to be the dinosaur, I don't want to die out. So here's the younger generation introducing new ideas. So let me embrace, and voila. So I remember, I hope you did not watch my first TikTok video. It was very stiff, and I was perhaps a little less comfortable in my own skin. But the idea of TikTok was reaching out. Is just I had been in the UAE for so long, and as sort of as dynamic as this country is in terms of the legal field, it's still a fairly new country. So I was kind of became a jack of many trades, I'd like to think. So there's so much I could offer and I could share, but how do you share with the broader masses? And still I have a very small law practice, so I don't have the capacity to help people for free, all the people that need legal help. And so the idea of TikTok was to be able to actually provide this sort of content, this legal content. And actually, so Sumaya's idea was to use TikTok for education purposes, not just entertainment and educational purposes. And since law is for the people, but yet so few people know actually about the law. And part of it is that the UAE is a country of expats. And so when you come from different countries, how do you know where to look for the laws? Plus most of the laws are originally in Arabic, and the laws are developing so much. So how do you educate yourself about what to do and not to do in this country? So having this platform on TikTok all of a sudden gave me the reach to the broader masses and to just the broader community. And I remember the first video, I think, made it into 80,000 people, the first video. Wow. So I think that was it. That was kind of the beginning of where we are right now and the beginning of the end. And that's, and I have to tell you, it's been, interestingly enough, social media has also forced me to develop and evolve as well, because there's been such a great demand in terms of just information and people asking about questions I would have never in the past wanted to research. I had a reason to research, for example. And so as a result, it's been this a very mutual kind of dynamic growing process. So I provide information, I get different kinds of questions, and so we research those, we share them. And so as a lawyer, I've become a lot more accessible, more knowledgeable, and broader, and many different subjects. And we've had just tremendous feedback from people. I went to Global Village for the first time recently, I have to say, and I'm a convert now. But people are just approaching me like, listen, you've helped us, you've changed my life. I did not know, I was a prisoner basically. I didn't have my passport, I didn't have my documents, and listening to your content, I even have this on video, believe it or not. It was such a kind of impromptu comment, but people have come and thank you, and so that obviously stimulates you and motivates you to continue to do more.
Well, thank you so much, honestly, on behalf of the UAE, because you've really removed the jargons from law and you've dumped it down for us, made it so much more easier for us to understand the different laws and different regulations and different rules. But we have so many questions coming in on social media about visas that we will jump right into it. So the golden visa, right? How does that work, and what exactly are the eligibility criteria to qualify, basically?
So the golden visa, number one, it's a 10-year visa. It's a 10-year visa, and it's granted. And so there's different categories of professionals or talent that could qualify. You could do it as a real estate investor. You could do it as an executive of a business. You could do it as an entrepreneur, as a scientist, as somebody who has basically ultimately somebody who can create or contribute into the UAE economy, either financially or talent-wise. So there's many categories. I think there's 10 or 12 different categories. But ultimately, in terms of the benefits, you get a 10-year residence visa. Now, with all full benefits, and then your whole family can qualify as well, including your children and even older children. In the past, for example, for sons, once they reach the age of 18, you could no longer sponsor, for example, your children. Under the golden visa, those limitations have been removed. Also, one of another benefits for many is that it allows you to be outside of the country for more than 6 months without having to come back and recheck. In order to maintain your status. One of the other benefits is that you can sponsor domestic help for more than 1 year, and that's for 2 years, again, for a lot of families who live here. And then you can, and on this golden visa, so you're your self-sponsor. So all of a sudden, you don't have anybody, no company, no business that is your sponsor for residence purposes. You are your own self-sponsor, and it basically states that so. But on this visa, you can work, you can invest, you can start up companies, you can invest in different types of ventures. So it's more or less kind of an all-encompassing in terms of your ability to not just live in the UAE, but also work.
Okay, so we're getting questions. So with this visa, right, the golden visa, you right now said you can. So basically, you don't need to be on a employer's visa. It's going to be your own visa. Number
Correct,
one,
yes.
And number two, can people sponsor their parents or siblings or anyone who've had legal cases on them and are out of the country?
So they can sponsor. Your parents, your siblings. Not your siblings. Your parents, your spouse, and your children. Not your siblings.
Okay.
No, actually, sorry. You can't sponsor certain siblings. But obviously not if it's.
So what if they have legal cases on them and they're out of the country for those purposes?
So there's two different sort of things. If you have legal cases and being out of the country, so you can actually sponsor your family members if they're outside of the country. And one of the other benefits of the golden visa is when you apply. So as a main golden visa holder, you can apply for your family members from the outside, and they have longer time to even stay outside of the country in order for them to come back before they come back and actually process their visa. So that's one of the other benefits. So, but ultimately, they too will need to go through the medical. So, and that you cannot do from outside the country. You do have to come back here and donate your blood and get your medical test. So for that, you will still have to come back here. So part of it, the majority of the process you could do remotely, but for ultimately getting your Emirates ID, you do need to do the medical, and for that you need to be in the UAE. With regards to legal cases, that's something else. So if you have a legal case, there are two types of legal case. There's a civil case and there's a criminal case. A civil case in of itself does not prevent you from entering the country or from traveling freely. It doesn't impose a travel ban on you or any kind of arrest warrant. A civil case, right? But a criminal case, that's a different matter. So a criminal case usually does lead to some sort of a travel ban or some sort of an arrest. So if somebody has had these kinds of cases, those cases would need to be resolved first before they're able to apply for a new residence visa here. And that's for obvious reasons, because for immigration purposes, in order for you to apply anew, you first need to close your previous immigration file or update that immigration file.
What about siblings? You were saying that you can do it for certain siblings. What's the criteria and eligibility for that?
So, for example, you could do it for the younger, the minor siblings, and also siblings who perhaps are dependents on, for example, special needs siblings. So we've had a few clients who have been able to sponsor their siblings with special needs. But for example, if it's your brother, that kind of falls out of scope. But if it's a younger, minor sibling, particular special needs, but actually with special needs, you can also sponsor. Basically infinitely. So even if you have an older brother but he has special needs, he'd also qualify.
If I'm your older brother and I am dependent on you.
You are my older brother by age. Look.
If I'm financially dependent on you, does that mean I'm eligible?
So with dependency here has more to do with physical and sort of mental dependency versus financial. But so apologies, I would not be able to sponsor you, my older brother.
So the green visa, people have a lot of questions about that, because they say that only if you are a green visa holder, only then can your son or daughter work as a student, but that is not true, because now any student is eligible to work in the UAE. So what exactly are the benefits of the green visa and who's eligible for that?
Sure. So maybe at a high level, there's three types of residence visa, if you will. There's the golden visa, which is 10 years. There's a green visa, which is 5 years. And then there is the regular, the peasant visas, like employee visas, like myself, for 2 years. Okay? So the basically
the lawyer, she can say that.
The employee visas. So on the golden visa, so if you are a student in the country, but you're sponsored by your family, so you could be sponsored by your family and also be on the golden visa and then still attend the university. And also work. So in the golden visa, basically you get all the benefits, right? That's why it's called golden. Now with the green visa, it's a 5-year visa. It's also self-sponsorship, and there are different types of green visas. So it's also for professionals, either for investors or for professionals, kind of the general category. So for professionals, if you have a bachelor degree, for example, and more like an advanced degree, and there's two different categories. So you could be working for someone. So for example, I could be working for you, my older brother, and I earn 15,000 dirhams a month. Just on the basis of that, I can receive. So again, there's an employment relationship, and I have 15,000 dirhams a month. I can receive my own green visa, and it's also self-sponsorship. So there's an employment relationship attached to it, but there is a salary of 15,000, and that allows me to apply for my own green visa, self-sponsorship once again, for 5 years. Now, when I leave you and set up my own competing business with you, I will still maintain my 5-year self-sponsored visa. That's one type of green visa. The other type of visa is that similar relationship, but for example, I have the same set of qualifications, but I don't work for you. And I earn more or less, and this obviously would apply to a lot of influencers these days in particular, 30,000 dirhams a month. So there's a higher threshold in terms of financial benefits or income, and then that too allows you to obtain green visa for your own self-sponsored visa for 5 years. And then there's the investors. So students don't quite. I mean, I guess there's the successful, talented students, perhaps, which is the question you asked. They also fall into the golden visa, not the green visa. So if you've graduated from one of the top universities, the 200 world universities in the last 2 years, and you were called a distinguished student, then you'll also qualify for a golden visa for 10 years. But it has to be a recent university in the last 2 years. So otherwise,
do you have to be employed?
No.
Okay.
No, so literally, if you had recently graduated from the university in the last 2 years, and from any university in the UAE in particular, and you have decent grades, then you would qualify just on purely on your academic achievement
Okay.
from the school. You'd qualify to have your own green visa for 5 years and for 10 years. Sorry, it's a golden visa. So green visa is not so much for students. For students, they would apply either through the university, and the university becomes their sponsor. Or if they have one of their parents who holds either golden visa or green visa, they can be sponsored under that.
What is the eligibility criteria for green visa? Is it the minimum income?
So the different types. So one is the minimum income, 15,000 if you're working for somebody, or 30,000 if you are self-employed, or if you're investing in the business. And the eligibility depends on the type of business. Also, if you own property and the property is below 2 million dirhams, also allows you to have green visa.
Any property.
Real estate property. It has to be in
Is there a
anywhere.
minimum?
Less than, it cannot if it's less than 2 million dirhams, right? So the minimum depends. It's before it was 1 million dirhams minimum, then it kind of they reduced it to 750,000. So it depends on the property. Sometimes even property within the 750,000 dirhams may qualify, but it has to be complete, and it cannot be off plan. And it has to be fully paid off in order to qualify for this kind of visa for real estate.
Fully paid off. Like you can't be in the middle of paying off your mortgages. It has to be completely done.
That's for the green visa.
Okay.
For golden visa, if you own property and your property is more than 2 million dirhams, then you qualify for golden visa. And for this, you don't have to. You can apply even if the property is still off plan, and even if it's mortgaged, as long as you have already paid into the developer or the system 2 million dirhams.
Okay.
So if you, let's say, bought a property off plan for 30 million dirhams, and a lot of people in Dubai, as we know, do buy these kinds of properties, but you've already paid in 5 million, but your property might be finished in the next 5 years, so it's off plan, but you've already paid 5 million dirhams towards the purchase price. That will qualify you for your own golden visa for 10 years.
Does it have to be residential, or can it be residential or commercial?
Good question. It could be either. So for green visa for property, that has to be your own. So it says residential. But for golden visa, it can be anything. In fact, it could be either property, or it can be any commercial or residential, or it could be an investment. Okay. So another criteria for golden visa, if you've just basically contributed financially into the economy here, i.e., you have money in the account. So the same 5 million dirham example I gave you. So you could just have 5 million dirhams in your bank account. On the basis of that alone, you would qualify for golden visa for 10 years. So it's been a tremendous, I guess, motivating factor for a lot of people to come to the UAE, move money to the UAE, and set up businesses and homes and bring their families here because of that. I mean, 10-year visa all of a sudden. And remember, this is a lot of people who have businesses, and they come to the UAE. They love being in the UAE, but businesses are not necessarily here full time. So it benefits for them to have a base here, but they don't necessarily want to come back every 6 months and check in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not having that kind of requirement attached to this particular visa also is a massive benefit for them.
Are there any lifelong visas or any lifelong residency given to investors who have like homes up to a certain amount?
I'm sure that's just a matter of time. But what one of the benefits, it's just not quite, doesn't quite answer your question, but it's an analogous benefit is, so if you have a main golden visa holder, and that person passes away, so his family, whoever it is, the sponsor, they will get the remainder of that visa. Basically, they get to retain the remainder of that visa, so they can be here until that time. So in terms of lifelong, as long as you continue to invest or continue to have that same property, let's say, then the visa, it's renewable for the same period of time under the same conditions.
Amazing.
So in 10 years' time, you'll just renew for another 10 years, and so on and so forth. So the UAE, one of the other changes in the UAE laws, and there have been so many, so is the new citizenship law as well. So back to your question about the lifelong benefits, the UAE citizenship law has also introduced new requirements, perhaps more flexible requirements for qualification to obtain UAE residency. So there have been a number of foreigners who have qualified for UAE residency as well, and that's again on the basis of their contribution into the UAE economy. So it's all basically more or less business and economy related. So anybody who can contribute to the country, there are a lot of opportunities for them. Yes.
Okay.
What about freelance visas? What is the criteria for that, and how long does it take? So
freelance visa, I want to separate because people use that word a little bit not quite accurately, because some people will, for example, my older brother, I work for you, I'm sponsoring your visa, and I go and I do my own projects, right? And so I'm freelancing. That's not a freelance visa. That's just an regular employment visa. You're just allowing me to go and work for someone else.
Okay.
So that's not quite freelance, legal freelance sort of arrangement. But then there are many free zones and economic zones that offer the actual freelance visa. So one of the more common ones that we often work with is DDA, which is the Dubai Development Authority, previously known as TCOM. So they have a freelance visa. So the freelance visa, so that way you would get your freelance license, and you would get and on the back of the freelance license, you would get your freelance visa. Until recently, that was for 3 years. Now it's for 2 years. So basically there you get your own freelance license, and that is, you can provide services. So you could be in education, you could be in web design, in social media. So you get the freelance license, and on the back of that, you get your own freelance visa, and then you can sponsor your family. So that's basically one option. And then there your own boss. You're not necessarily, it's kind of called a sole proprietorship, but there's no limited liability, but basically allows you to work legally in the UAE. So that's one option. The other option, and it's called the e-trader license, also referred as a freelance. But for that particular license, you need to already be a resident here. So for example, if you have a golden visa, and then you can apply for this e-trader license, or basically a freelance license, through the DED, which is the Department of Economic Development. And they have this sort of DED cafe. You go there, and it's very easy to apply. By the way, this is
a cafe.
Yes, yeah. I know, it's really like DED has really evolved. It's very nice. It's just they've got baristas there. It's actually a proper cafe. So if you're a little younger, but back in the old days, DED was not necessarily a very modern place to go to, but now with this DED cafe, it's very hip. So and the whole idea is just to provide the kind of user-friendly customer experience. So they will open this, or let you register for this e-trader license, a free trader license, within basically like half an hour, and it's only 1,000 dirhams. So for all those youngsters, for example, who have businesses, either they're on TikTok or influencers of sorts, or they're web designers, language teachers, so they can apply for that license, and now they will have their own residence visa, that presumably let's say from their parents, and they will have their own freelance license to be able to operate. And that license, 1,000 dirhams, and DD Cafe can open it for you you can register within just a half an hour.
That is incredible amounts of information that you've given us, and just clarified everything so wonderfully. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Ludmila.
My pleasure. Thank you. There's many more
a
visas.
A whole bunch of questions.
I can keep coming to you every week.
Please do.
Yes.
I'm not even kidding. But before we leave you and wrap up for today, can you tell us where can we find you? What type of content can we expect from you? And any message to the people?
Yes. So we are on 17 social media platforms now.
Okay.
So the main one obviously is TikTok, and I got verified on TikTok. I was the first and the only still lawyer in the region that got verified. So thank you very much, TikTok. We didn't apply for it. Basically, just recognized for I'd like to think the quality of content that I provide. So obviously TikTok is perhaps one of our main platforms. We also have our own podcast, and that was for the last, 4 years, I've been hosting my own podcast, and that's Logical, L-A-W.
Hey,
Logical.
I see what you did there. That's so smart.
Logical, L-Y Law. And then we're on every other Instagram and Facebook and every other platform. Easily accessible, easily found. And in terms of what you can find and sort of the content you can find, I do on TikTok, I do weekly live Q&As.
Oh, cool.
So every Wednesday at 4 p.m., this is a free-for-all, so any people can submit their question ahead of time or in real time, and I ask
advice, questions.
It's free legal advice, yeah.
Amazing.
And once again, because my expertise is pretty broad at this point, so it could be about immigration, it could be about employment, it could be dispute resolution, could be personal status. There's a lot of domestic related issues or questions that we answer. So that's a weekly live Q&A, and it's either half an hour or an hour, depending on how many questions we've got. And depending again on the demand, I can also host more. And last week alone, we did 3 live TikToks because there was just a lot of demand. So that's perhaps, and then we're also live on Instagram and live on Facebook. So in terms of content, perhaps that's the one where people can really obtain free legal advice on a regular basis. And sort of in real time. And with regards to kind of the more substantive advice, there's the podcast, which we also transcribe, and then there's loads of legal content, free legal content that we make available on a regular basis on all these 17 different platforms, plus including YouTube. So you can basically become your own lawyer. I can qualify you to be a lawyer if you listen to all my content.
Thank
I will
you
check.
so much. This has been such a pleasure, so informative. You heard it here first, guys. You know where to find her. Thank you so much for watching. That is it from us.
Yes,
Casey.
happy St. Paddy's Day to all those celebrating, to you and
I know.
you.
I have a little bit of green, not much. So, but happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation. That was very insightful and fun.
Thank you so much, guys. That is it from us. We'll be back same time, same place on Monday. Well, not me. Casey's back. Casey and good old Simi G. Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.